Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. It's so happy to see some familiar faces here. And it's truly an honor to see that this session is by some most esteemed guests in the audience. Thank you very much for joining our session today. And our highlight on this session would be transforming organic waste for regenerative climate solution. So from what I've read, this mismanagement of solid waste is a global issue that is increasingly taking the spotlight as landfills around the world are reaching its capacity. So in developing countries like Indonesia, waste is often still treated and disposed through open dumping and open burning, which results in negative environmental impacts that also poses public health risk to surrounding communities. So on this session, we will learn the strategy and the technology in managing organic waste to help reduce the greenhouse gas emission. And I would like to invite all four speakers to the stage, being the first one. Please welcome the Director of Waste Handling from the Ministry of Environment and Forestry, Republic of Indonesia, Dr. Nofriza Tahar. Silakan Bapak. Following next, founder of Kertabumi Recycling, Mas Iqbal Alexander. We would like to also invite the Chief of Sustainability Officer of VRM, Mr. Rowell Soon, who is going to join us virtually online. And on the side, we have another Director of Strategy and Sustainable Development from Djarum Foundation. You were out just before, so I was like worried you're not here on time. Bapak Jamie Cahyadi. And of course, our moderator for this session, she's the Senior Sustainability Manager from Djarum Foundation, Mbak Nadia Suryanto. Please take the lead, thank you.
Selamat sore dan salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Good evening, everyone. My name is Nadia Suryanto. I am the Senior Sustainability Manager for Djarum Foundation, and I'll be your moderator for this session. Thank you so much for being here with us today. So in the next hour or so, as Mbak Mona has mentioned, we will discuss the issue of waste, and specifically organic waste and its implications to climate change. And while this issue is global in nature, we will focus the discussion on the context of Indonesia and explore how an effective multi-stakeholder approach for organic waste management could be one of the solutions for Indonesia to achieve its NDCs. So today we have representatives from government, thank you, Pak, civil society, and the private sector. And the idea today is to discuss the issue from multiple perspectives and explore how both the top-down and bottom-up approach could work together to drive and sustain lasting impact. So Mbak Mona already introduced the speakers. So I think to start off the sessions, I will invite each panelist to share how they address the issue of organic waste in their respective roles for about 10 minutes each, yeah. And then we'll go into a more informal discussion for about 20 minutes before I invite the audience questions. And there is a QR code on the screen here. So if anybody has any questions for the speakers, please scan the code and submit your questions online. And we will try to address them before the end of the session. Okay, so to kick us off, I would like to invite Bapak Nofrizal to start his presentation.
Thank you, Nadia. Can I use the...
Yes, you may, Pak.
Thank you, Nadia. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Excellencies, special my boss, Mrs. Rosa Vivin Ratnawati, Director General for the Waste Management and Hazardous and Substance. Special for Deputy Minister Bapak Dida Gardera. Please stand up, please. Okay. Distinguished resource speakers, Mr. Iqbal, Pak Jamie, and Rowell from the online. all the participants. First, I would like to say thank you to the organizing event, special for the Djarum Foundation and the Pavilion Indonesia. In the name of the government of Indonesia, I would like to say really appreciate to the Djarum Foundation for the initiative to treat the organic waste in Kudus Regency. So please, we give the appreciation for the Djarum Foundation. I would like to share about the organic waste in Indonesia. Next slide. Yeah, this is our condition, the composition of the solid waste in Indonesia. The main of composition is the food waste. Right now, based on our Indonesian platform, national data platform of the solid waste, food waste is the almost 41% if we compare with all the waste of in Indonesia. So as we know, food waste is the main of sort to of the greenhouse gas from the solid waste. So this is very important if we can treat properly organic waste. Next slide. Last year, we already submit our commitment, Indonesian commitment, enhanced NDC, National Determined Contribution. So in the waste sector, we have increased the target. In 2030, we have to reduce the greenhouse gas from the solid waste about 40 million ton per year. So this is our challenge in Indonesia to get our goal. Next, based on the NDC and the long-term strategy, we have a scenario. We have several milestones in solid waste management in Indonesia. First, in 2025, we have to manage 100% of the solid waste with the properly and the good condition, and we have to reduce the plastic waste to the sea 70%. In 2030, we have to get the target how to meet the enhanced national determined contribution. We have to reduce 40 million ton greenhouse gas in 2030. So after post 2030, we will have the target about the net zero emission, net zero future, I think, from the waste sector. Next. This is our scenario. We can see the figure. In the green one is the solid waste sector. We have in waste sector 4 from the industrial and municipal solid waste. So we can see in 2050 we will get the net zero emission from the solid waste. Next. This is our formula for the solid waste. We can see in the future there is no landfill in the future. you can see in the blue one. But we have some several mitigation to reduce greenhouse gas from the solid waste. So we can see in the brown one, this is a waste treatment without emission. So like in the initiative of the Djarum Foundation, treatment of the organic waste with the maybe like use the insect like black soldier fly, like the big composting. So this is in categories of the treatment of without emission. So this is will be determinant for our scenario in the future. Next. So we have 4 strategies and approach to have the good solid waste management and to reduce the greenhouse gas from the solid waste. First, less waste to landfill policy. We have a scenario after 2030, there is no new landfill in Indonesia. So the second, we encourage the public, we encourage the awareness of the public. We call the less waste lifestyle. The next strategies is the increasing the recycling rate. For example, in Indonesia right now, in the waste paper, we need industrial Indonesia. They need almost 8 million ton per year. So we serve from the local, from national, that's only 50%. So in 2030, we try, we plan all the raw material from the waste paper come from the national, from the local. The last strategies, we build the industrialization of the solid waste management. For example, waste to fertilizer, like in Kudus, waste to electricity. Right now, we already set up in the 12 cities in Indonesia. Waste to energy from waste to RDF. We have some off-taker in Indonesia, like salmon industry, power plant industry, smelter industry. So I think maybe approximately, I think we can manage solid waste almost 20 million ton per year from the waste to RDF. Next, waste to fuel, waste to material, waste to biogas. Welcome, Excellencies, Pak Mas Ota. Next. Next, yeah, I think, yeah. Next slide, the last slide. Next, yeah. I just want to say, to give the appreciation for the Djarum Foundation for this initiation and for the initiative to treat in the organic waste in the Kudus. So I think we need the more collaboration to solve the solid waste problem in Indonesia, because based on our regulation, the responsibility is all the stakeholders have the responsibility to tackle the solid waste problem. So that's my presentation. Thank you so much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih banyak, Pak Nofrisal. And now if I can invite Mas Iqbal to share his presentation.
Thank you, Mbak Nadia. Distinguished colleagues and my role model, Ibu Vivin, Pak Nofrizal, Pak Jemi. Thank you so much for having me here today. So this is a story of my community-based waste management in two different locations. One is in urban area in Jakarta, and another one in remote area in Pringgasela village, East Lombok. So from this picture, you could see the difference even from the house. In urban, we have concrete modern house with most of residents are corporate employees, middle income, and university graduates. On the other hand, we have communities in remote areas. It took me 2-hour flights and 3-hour road trip to get to this village. And most of the residents are farmers with around $200 income per month. So my waste management project took place in 2 different locations in order to decide whether economic status or education influence behavior on waste management. And this is the waste management practices in both areas. In urban cities, like in Jakarta, the collection rate is 100%, but what they collected is unsegregated waste. Collected by the government agency, while in the remote area, the collection rate was only 30% due to the lack of road infrastructure and also the affordability of the local people to pay for the tipping fee. This is classic example of how remote area having access to waste management. And we did baseline studies before we conducted the project. So as you can see from the pie charts, so organic waste basically the major source, the major type of waste, both in urban and in rural. But you could also tell that in urban areas where people have a higher income, they produce waste more per capita and also more organic waste. While in rural, the majority of waste is organic waste, but we could conclude from these pie charts that the wealthier people, the more waste they produce every day. And so we conducted participatory FGD basically to enable communities to design their own waste management based on their challenges and potential. We work with 4 different groups: women, men, youth, and community leaders, to enable them to hear what they voice, their feedback, their input, and also we share the organic waste treatment method available in Indonesia, from biopores, compost, biogas, and so on. So we explore all the possibilities, and they figure out the pros and the cons and how they could adopt the one that appropriate for their location. And we utilize 2 metrics to help them identify which action that meet their criteria. The first one is to decide which action are effective and also acceptable. And the second one, which action are low cost and need low support of assistance. So members of every community wrote every action they think met the criteria and classified by these 2 metrics. And an agreement was reached. The community decided community action that are 1, effective, 2, acceptable, 3 low cost, and the last one is required low support of assistant. So for the one in urban area in Jakarta, they voted for communal composting. So we gave several buckets for each household so they could put all their organic waste in that bucket, and we collect every morning and return the day after. Then we compost in the composting facilities. Nothing fancy here, just a normal composting facilities. Over the years, we managed around 500 kilogram of waste, and we produce 200 kilogram organic fertilizer every week. And they sell the organic fertilizer, so green jobs created. They could also accelerate that economic growth. But of course, not every member of the communities participates. That's why we also provided another type of methods where we made hundreds of biopores across the area, and we provided composting bins in every corner. So we give more access to the community if they want to segregate and manage the organic waste. And this is the result over the last 4 years. In 2022, they managed to reduce their waste up to 55%. And the community partner we work with is women. We call it the power of mama. It translates to women play a major role in shaping their family and their communities to be environmentally conscious. So they are a doctor, entrepreneur, teacher, housewife, but for me, they are Wonder Woman. And, and this one, our case in remote area, they voted for household composting facilities where we dig 1 meter by 1 meter hole, so they could just put all their kitchen scrap in that composting facilities. But another one, some communities voted to have domestic chicken, where you could just give all the kitchen scrap to the chicken and it disappears in minutes, rather than to wait for weeks if you have normal composting facilities. In the remote area, they also voted for black soldier flies due to the rise of fish aquaculture in the region. So this has also helped them to reduce their organic waste. And this is the product of the dried maggot, where they could sell for around $1 for 2 kilogram bags of dry maggots. And this is the result over the last 4 years. In 2022, we managed to reduce the waste up to 35%, lower than the urban area due to the low interest and awareness from the communities. And from that 2 cases, we could say conclusion that first, community-based waste management program offer various benefits apart from recycling, but that they also provide green jobs and healthier environment. And bottom-up waste management approach, originating from democratic approach, increase voluntary cooperation from the community because they feel heard, they feel appreciated, so they want to contribute more. Community-based waste management program often require initial support, assistance, and resources, but they are low cost, effective, and leading to sustainable long-term solution. And the last one, bottom-up approach, require a high level of community participation. So this doesn't happen in many places, but we should just increase their participation by trigger them, provoke them to take participation in waste management. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mas Iqbal, for sharing. And I think we'll get to hear a little bit more about his work later in the panel discussion. But for now, I would like to turn to Roel, and he's left, because he's joining virtually, he's left a video message to play. If we can cue the video, please.
Water at a massive scale. Hi, my name is Roel. I'm here to share a message. Hi, my name is Roel. I'm here to share a message of hope and how a project in Indonesia. Hi, my name is Roel. I'm here to share a message of hope and how a project in Indonesia has helped transform it from a mere possibility to tangible reality. I will be introducing solar power in biological form, applied in a way that fixes carbon and makes water at a massive scale. There are two parts to this story, and we'll start from the processing of organics and later on touch on how to sequestrate carbon into soils. In aerobic composting, the idea is to add oxygen into organic waste materials such as food waste, green waste, manures, really any organic material. You can blow the oxygen in, you can turn it in, there's a whole variety of ways. But what this does is it oxidizes 70% of that material into atmosphere and releases GHGs, including carbon and nitrogen oxides, water vapor, and you finish with 30% of that nutrient leftover, which we call compost. So this is spending energy to burn off nutrient, losing most of it as GHGs into atmosphere, which now cannot meaningfully contribute to soil or agriculture. And therefore, degrading organic material this way drives emissions. At the same time, the definition of biogenic CO2 refers to carbon in organic waste material that was originally removed from atmosphere by photosynthesis and under natural conditions cycles back to the atmosphere as CO2. Now, what if I told you that there's a way to process that same organic material, whatever it might be, that does not spend energy and does not produce an emission? Follow me on this journey. We must start here, and it starts with photosynthesis. Let's start from the type of photosynthesis that is familiar to everyone, where green plants capture the energy of sunlight and then store that energy in carbohydrate molecules. Here, only a portion of the visible spectrum is absorbed. This is a really small slice of the total EM spectrum that is freely available from the sun. Well, how about the rest? Nature works well beyond what our eyes can visibly see. And as it turns out, billions of years ago, before photosynthesis evolved in plants, microorganisms were already actively using the rest of the EM spectrum, and they still do today. And the way they work completely changed the way we think about the carbon and water cycle. An entirely new field of biosciences was developed, where this energy collection happens in 3 dimensions, underwater or underground, 24 hours a day, manufacturing water as a byproduct, and sequestrating gaseous carbon. In short, a nature-based solution for fixing carbon and making water. So VRM developed a bunch of methods aimed at growing that reaction using organic waste material to allow for low-cost, decentralized, mass production anywhere in the world. And this is a simplified cutaway diagram that leverages on biological solar power that ultimately results in the accumulation of living humus without producing net emissions. The process is simple, typically costs less than landfill, and has a 100% conversion rate by mass without pest, pathogen, or odor problems. The process, which does not require external energy to be spent in putting GHGs into the atmosphere, resulting in a 100% conversion and productization rate. The emissions from conventional practices is completely avoided. And this is because regenerative upcycling of organic material recaptures avoidable emissions. The takeaway here is that there's a world of difference between these two. And if we relook at this statement, right, there is a type of photosynthesis that cycles not into atmosphere, but into the soil. Not in the form of CO2, but as soil organic carbon, living humus, and not a degradation process, but due to regenerative processes. Here's a crash course on how to run the process. Don't worry, we have a few countries helping us out here, And Malaysia will start. So we collect organic material, we calculate the dosage needed, we dilute and we spray the photosynthetic catalysts on. Then we pile it up like how Thailand is doing it here, or in land scarce Singapore where they pile it 18 meters high. Then we make sure there's a dip in the center of the pile and cover it up, just like how the Philippines has just demonstrated it, and you're done. You can do the same process in the desert like how the UAE is doing here in Ras Al Khaimah, and exactly the same thing on the other side of the planet in Australia. We could use mechanized methodologies for large-scale applications, just like how the United States is demonstrating right here, or as creatively as how China is doing it in an old landfill site, deliberately recapturing methane into the process. But it is the project in Indonesia that really combines the various best practices to maximize the positive social and environmental outcomes by adapting the technology to their unique circumstances. And by the end of the year, we would have the same process open in Saudi Arabia and in Jordan and in Egypt. And regardless of where it is made anywhere on the globe, we end up with a carbon-rich, a humified organic carbon, which is literally chock full of life. The material is moist, fresh, it's a living material that has an earthy petrichlor scent that is best described as the smell you get before the rain in a forest, and has diverse fungal populations. It is dense, it's heavy with moisture that is locked within the humic acid that is constantly regenerated within the material. This is the fundamental building blocks of carbon-based life in the soil, and for that reason, we called it humisoil. We've got a few samples flown in from Southeast Asia, and I encourage you to take the time to experience it yourself at the Indonesian Pavilion. And this is where part 2 starts. When we add this material into depleted soils, we are allowing for the stabilized photosynthetic reaction in the humisoil to turn the entire treated area into a giant biological solar cell. The land continues to fix carbon, make water, trigger topsoil formation, gradually regenerating the soil ecosystem biodiversity. It acts as a secondary underground photosynthesis, which supports plant-based photosynthesis. The resultant impact on food production from terraforming depleted land into arable soils can be quite visual. So this picture was taken from a farm where the change occurred in about 7 months from left to right. And accompanying the change in the soil, that's the response of the plants from left to right. And in Thailand, a chili plantation went from this to this. And Australia, pharmaceuticals, left to right. And in the Philippines, growing rice from left to right. In a golf course in Singapore, sand to soil. And in China, rice grown in saline alkali soil before and after. And in Indonesia, pineapples from left to right. And here in the UAE, fodder for grazing animals before and after, just like how they do it in Malaysia, exactly the same. Depleted soils from left to right. Regenerating the soil and moisture, it drives agronomic outcomes, which in turn improves food security. So it's decarbonization that is driven by soil regeneration. And as the soil carbon accumulates over time, given enough time, carbon can accumulate vertically, just like in this picture. Here's a tree that's 20 years old, so you can see that original soil horizon. And on the right side of this picture, that's sugarcane, where somehow that topsoil layer is now more than 400 millimeters higher than the surrounding soil horizon. How do we account for 4,000 cubic meters of material extra per hectare? How do we do that? We've tried to quantify it. For example, here's a hyperspectral satellite picture of an area that was going through 4 years of drought in Australia. More green in this picture means more photosynthesis, and more red means soils that are barren. And turns out that treated soils over a longer period of time are pretty much completely green. So this tangibly shows the impact of that accumulating carbon. Now we can imagine a future where the farmer gains a potential new income stream. Number one, he produces food, but now, number two, his underlying soil can act as a permanent and massive carbon accumulating sink at the same time. The soil, not the crop. So case studies worldwide today are suggesting about 20 tons carbon dioxide equivalent unit sequestration potential per hectare and per year. We are working on methods to quantify this, and we're in the process of submitting a new carbon methodology to account for this. Quick recap. We upcycle organic wastes through an emissions-free catalyst production method to continue that soil photosynthetic reaction and catalyze the biological carbon sequestration and water manufacture in improving soils and therefore achieve better food security, hence leveraging organic wastes for regenerative climate solutions. All of what you've just heard has been published as a best practice in the textbook, An Introduction to Circular Economy, certified as a soil carbon amendment by the USDA, recently presented at the UN and the FAO level, awarded by the CCAC, projects in 33 countries and territories, supporting 12 out of 17 UN SDGs. So quickly, we're going to share an ongoing project with Saudi Arabia for a sense of the sort of impact in the GCC region. Here, we're combining elements of the circular carbon economy framework together with the Saudi Green Initiative, which is meant to terraform 40 million hectares of soil through the accumulation of carbon into the soil carbon pool, and hence reducing irrigation needs by 50% or more. So, for less than the cost of the water savings for the project, when applied to say half of the SGI or 20 million hectares, the data thus far is pointing towards a carbon sequestration potential of 136.5% of the entire carbon emissions of Saudi Arabia at 0.8 gigatons per year, decarbonizing atmosphere through the recarbonizing of soils towards an arable Arabia, one where carbon is not the enemy and carbon is a friend. And this short presentation here hopefully provides sufficient technical context to better understand Indonesia and Djarum Foundation's work, considered to be a global best-in-class for 2023. Their decisive leadership and innovative spirit in adapting this technological tool to maximize local impact has resulted in truly amazing outcomes which has inspired many others in the ASEAN region and beyond. Do save this QR code where we openly share information, including a download of this presentation. So take a picture here and save it for later use. My name is Roel, Chief Sustainability Officer of VRM Biologic, and on behalf of the team, the Indonesian government, and our gracious hosts, the UAE, I thank you for this opportunity to share.
Thank you, Roel, for the video message. And for those of you who have never heard of Humisoil before and should be interested, we actually have a sample up front here, so you can have a look after the session ends. And as Roel mentioned, it's actually not compost, even though it looks like it. If I may attempt to summarize the science, it's some sort of man-made topsoil that can fix carbon and restore depleted land areas. So with that said, we have our last presentation from Pak Jemi, so I'll hand over the floor to him.
Oke, selamat malam semua. Yang saya hormati Bu Vivin ya, dan Pak Nofri, ya, dan jajaran dari Kementerian Lingkungan Hidup dan Kehutanan. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share our lessons learned, our experience in Djarum Foundations in Kudus, our hometown. So, well, the nice thing about being the last panelist is that, I mean, pretty much have already covered everything. So from the previous panel. So I would probably like to start by saying that we are not an expert in waste management, in organic waste. We are not an expert. We know a lot in Djarum Foundation. We know a lot about badminton, but not waste management. So this is really a journey that we start from the beginning, from scratch. And in fact, I'm learning so much from our panelists even today. Like I learned from Roel that there's a significant difference between compost and Humisoil. And that's something that I think is amazing how the more we learn this technology, and I think there are many other technologies, the closer we get to the solutions, to these regenerative climate solutions. And secondly, maybe next slide, please. Yeah. So secondly, why are we doing this? Well, simply because we care. We care for our hometown, Kudus. Kudus is the smallest regency in Central Java, split into 9 sub-districts and 123 villages. Area is about 42 42,000 hectares, and is only about 1.31% of the area of Central Java. Although it is the smallest regency in Central Java, but the challenges that we face are still pretty much the same. And so our context is merely just a small reflections of the overall challenges that we have been seeing in everywhere. So third is we want to be actively part of the solutions. Yeah. So we know the challenge. So this is the challenge. So the challenge is that the landfills are overloaded. They are full. So what can we do? Basically, there's a lot of things going in the waste, but nothing is going out. And the solutions that we're facing right now is that, oh, okay, we can expand the landfills, but until when you keep expanding the landfills? And of course, that solutions is not sustainable, right? So again, we started to learn more about what's going on. So we want to follow the waste. What happened with this typical waste? What's going on? What's happening? So usually in the household waste, it will the one that is recycled will go to the waste bank, right? It will go to the recycle industry. We know about the waste flow before, and some of them will be collected and they will go to landfills, while the others, they are not managed well. They will probably go to the side road or to the rivers, or but especially in Kudus, when I go back to Kudus, we have like mountainous area where it's kind of out of reach from the waste collectors, and then maybe there's still a lot of work that we have to do to build the awareness about the waste management. So in terms of like segregating the waste, how to dispose the waste properly. So there's still a lot of challenges that we are facing in Kudus. So what will be the better solutions here? So the better solutions is how we can help to minimize and reduce the waste going to landfill. How do we make sure that we can keep reducing the waste to landfill? And I think that's what Pak Nofrizal was saying about one of the strategy is to have less waste to landfill. Since majority of waste, next slide please, since the majority of waste is actually organic waste, 78% of it, so that's something that we can focus to help to tackle this challenge. I think we'll have the biggest impacts. So, and then apparently, next slide please, we also see that there's a lot of other benefits that we can do to reduce or segregate organic waste. Number one is we can get higher yield of inorganic waste going to recycle if they are clean from organic waste. So by managing organic waste, we can actually increase the yield of recycled materials, which will also increase more valuable waste going to the waste banks. Yeah, and then we can automatically, indirectly, we can reduce the volume of waste going to the landfills. Of course, by doing that, by having less waste to the landfill, we will have less carbon emissions, especially from the methane and from the unmanaged food waste, and less ground and water pollutions, and of course, less fire hazard during the dry seasons, and then less flood risk during the rainy seasons. So there's a lot of other, all these benefits that come if we manage the organic waste. Yeah. So after implementing various options like composting and vermis compostings, so in 2018, Djarum Foundation started to adopt this VRM technology to process organic waste into humus soil. So please watch the video following. Thank you, thank you. So we'll go to the slide. So the video of how it's actually from our site in Kudus in our operations area where we manage starting to manage organic waste since 2018 and it's keep growing. So we can share that from our experience. We also learned that this technology is very well suitable for urban contexts. Yeah, so we see that in the urban context, of course, space area is a challenge. But these solutions doesn't require large area. And we can also accommodate large scale. So these piles are minimum 50 ton of food waste, organic waste, and all that. So it also can accommodate large scales. No requirement for aeration and mechanical process. So you don't have to do aeration process. The scent is also milder. Of course, there will be an issue if, for urban context if there's a strong smell. And also the humisoil that we produce can be used for our existing tree planting program. So there's a lot of wins here that we learned from implementing this VRM technology. So next, in Indonesia, we have a philosophy called gotong royong, right? So where we work together hand in hand towards the missions, right? So we cannot grow without our partners. So in 2018, we started from one partners, and then throughout the years, we are growing. It has grown very since then, and we have now 312 committed partners. Committed here meaning that they are not only actually committed administration, like sign the contract, say, okay, we are committed to segregate waste, and we, also to contribute the food waste, organic waste to us. But they are committed to actually also promote this initiative. And our partners are everywhere. I mean, they are various from restaurants, from schools, hotels, hospitals, and they continue to grow. And we're also very happy to use and utilize the humisoil. Next slide, please. Yes. So far, as of today, we have utilized more than 22,000 meter cubic of humisoils in various applications such as tree planting. We do a lot of tree plantings in Djarum Foundations, and also with the other, like forest restorations in Gunung Muria, in Pati Ayam. So next slide. So going back to our challenge, we want to reduce the amount of waste going to the landfill. So considering that now, estimated we have more than 500 meters square of meter cubic of waste daily. We have supported, we have helped to process about 21% of the organic waste in Kudus. So next slide. This is my last slide, I think. Oh, next step. So next step is we will continue to scale up our processing capacity. And then we will also expand our partnership because it's very essential to grow. And then, of course, and also all are integrated into this into our umbrella program called Kudus Asik. It's Apik Resik, meaning Kudus beautiful and clean. Yeah. And then, so last slide. In closing, we believe that this initiative will we will help to minimize organic waste into landfill. We also help to support the government to reduce emissions and meet the NDC targets. And then support our restorations projects in Gunung Muria and Pati Ayam. And at the end, all of that, we can see that this is one example of how we manage organic waste towards regenerative climate solutions. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Pak Jamie, and thank you everybody for sharing. And now we're going to move into a short panel discussion, informal one, to dig even deeper into some of the points that were mentioned by the speakers. But while we are having this conversation, please, again, feel free to submit any questions that you might have through the QR code on the screen, and we'll try to address it at the end of the session. So I would like to start off welcome, Roel. I think he's now online, so live. So
you
you can
hear me?
also address questions to him. So I'd like to start off the panel discussion with a question to Pak Faisal around policy perspective and implementation. So Bapak, thank you for sharing about the Zero Waste and Zero Emissions program. It sounds like synergies between different government bodies is quite important, ya Pak, in achieving this target. So could you share a little bit more about how you plan to collaborate with your fellow government agencies, maybe such as Bappenas or our National Planning Agency, in helping to achieve this target for Indonesia?
Thank you, Nadia. Before I answer your question, I think we will give the appreciation to Djarum Foundation, right? I think it's a very interesting presentation and methods this afternoon. We can see VRM composting technology. This is good. The ratio of 1 ton to treat the organic waste can reduce 1 ton CO2 equivalent. This is good. If we see the conventional composting, the ratio is the 1.6. So I think it's good for the Djarum Foundation. So in the name of the government of the Indonesia, we encourage the Djarum Foundation to register to the System Registrasi Nasional until get the certificate emission reduction. So I think it's stimulant for others, right? So once again, we give the appreciation to the Djarum Foundation. For the question, I think based on our national determined contribution, we have committed to reduce in 5 sectors. So in waste sector, the focal point is the Ministry of Environment and Forestry, especially Mrs. Madam Director General Rosa Vivin Ratnawati. So right now we already have the document of plan operation. We give the name Zero Waste, Zero Emission document. So I think in short time, Bu DG, we will launch to the public the document. So I think all the minister, all stakeholder, they should follow this document. This is a commitment. So this is an Indonesian commitment, not only Ministry of Environment commitment. So this is our synergize. So this is an umbrella of our plan to manage the solid waste in Indonesia, and including reducing the greenhouse gas emission. Thank you, Nadia.
Thank you, Pak Nofrisal. We look forward to seeing that document when it's available, Pak.
Yep. In short time.
In a short time, okay. And I truly believe that policy has a really big role to play in this case, in setting the right infrastructure to enable change. So we really should not underestimate that kind of the power of it. And now I'd like to turn to Mas Iqbal, yeah? So maybe turning to a more bottom-up perspective, Mas, how do you see the role of civil society in implementing the Zero Waste, Zero Emissions program on the ground? And you've mentioned a few before, but what are some of the success stories that you can share regarding waste management at the community level that can help Indonesia to achieve this target?
Thank you. Thank you, Nadia. I think we all know that waste management is everyone's responsibility. And from the previous presentation, we could conclude that domestic waste is the major contributor of waste. So the key is in communities. Sustainable waste management couldn't be implemented without participation and attention from the community. So community plays a major role in creating and paving the way to a healthier and sustainable future. And one of the biggest lessons learned that we get from our project is that when we involve communities to the decision-making process, they are more likely to voluntarily participate in the program. So I think it's important to engage community, to make them heard, to get their feedback so they are willingly participate in the program. Thank you.
Thank you, Mas. And if I can draw from our own experience in Djarum Foundation, we also see that getting community buy-in is really key in ensuring that our programs are sustained on the ground. And it doesn't matter the topic, whether it be waste management or conservation. So community buy-in is really key. And I would like to turn to the kind of technology and private sector side. So turning to Roel. Thank you for sharing the video message earlier, Roel. I mean, it's good to have you live with us now. So my question is, can you tell us more about the project that you're doing here in the UAE? And are there any specific learnings from your collaboration with Djarum Foundation that you are applying in this context?
Firstly, can you hear me? If you can wave your hand. Hi. Oh, okay, great. Fantastic.
Can we get his a bit
Thank
louder?
You.
Yeah.
Right, okay. So it's really nice to see all of you, right? And very fortunately, my colleague Amin Rayam, who's actually also our Chief Investment Officer and also head of the Middle East region, he's actually best placed to answer the first part of this question. Okay, so Amin, please.
Thank you, Ruwan. Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to be here with you today. In Ras Al Khaimah within the UAE, we have embarked on a program along with VRM in early 2023 to divert around 7,500 tons of green waste, camel manure, and sewage sludge, along with general household organic waste from the landfill by using our groundswell continuous fermentation process. In addition, we are upcycling around 0.5 ton of food waste on a daily basis using our bioregion process. In parallel, we are testing these end products on intensive horticulture and native vegetation in different terrains within the UAE. And I can tell you the results are so far extremely positive, Rohel, in Iraq, UAE, and the region. Once completed, the program will aim at terraforming substantial land bank by upcycling the country's organic waste and repurposing it for agriculture and revegetation process. And eventually this will close the loop between circular economy from one hand and waste management and food security from another hand. Thank you, Rowan.
And so for the second part of the question, I think we have 3 points to offer. It's regarding what we've learned from Djarum, and that's actually applied in this region and how that has brought things forward. So operating across the world, the first point, we tend to meet significant language and cultural barriers that must be overcome. So in Djarum, we train the trainers. And what happened was we let the young leaders step forward. Okay, we let them teach the technology. They gain ownership. They get the ground level buy-in, and they become the champions in their communities. So this actually allows for local innovation and adaptation to maximize the kind of impact we are looking for. So one good example from the Djarum side is, I'm sure you've seen the video from Djarum just now. Do you realize that they have all these blue color buckets in the background? That is how they work with 300 plus partner organizations in their organics collection drive. Okay, each of the partners know exactly what the blue bin is for, what can go inside, and why it was there. So as a result, contamination rates were very low. And in doing so, Djarum Indonesia has actually demonstrated segregation at source. And this is something that most advanced economies can't even dream of, okay? It's deceivingly simple innovation from the ground staff that's combined with the societal buy-in. So the first learning from the Djarum side is that empowerment on the grassroots level, that is decentralized leadership, is a force multiplier for this type of decentralized technology.
Exactly, Roel. And let me add one point here. When we did those groundswell pile in the middle of the desert, in the middle of the summer, and actually the young operators start using the product and they realized that the smell actually disappeared almost instantly this is when they took ownership. They took ownership from day one. So we formed the 3 piles of 2,500 tons each there. The first one, we did it ourselves, while the remaining 2, they took ownership and they did it themselves, while we took the back seat and we watched them perfect it. Right? If they needed any help, it was over WhatsApp. We weren't even present there. This is how easy the process was. We found a very similar experience within the bioregion process, where the local operator came up with his own mechanism to transport the liquid slurry from point A to point B. This is when you own the product. It's no longer, we just train the trainers, as you just mentioned, and then off they go.
And our second point on the learning from Djarum was Djarum was doing the process not just because they were thinking of waste management. They needed to have the humus soil for the downstream impact on the tree planting and the terraforming. Okay, so this drove a change in mentality, because it changed from one where this is waste management, and it changed into this is upcycling, it is manufacturing. We are here to do a value creation exercise. Okay, so from a logistical exercise to hide the waste, into valuing it into a resource, and then focusing on a well-run process to consistently get the highest quality material. Why? Because it is important for the highest quality material to do its job. Okay, right? So when we started in Djarum in 2018, we started by showing how to manually spray the piles. And then the pandemic came. And the next time when we came back after the pandemic, they had evolved the process by themselves into an efficient, standardized, locally relevant manufacturing process.
Beautiful, beautiful. And we're taking these learnings from Djarum, and we're implementing it in Iraq as we speak. So when we treated when we had a program on odor management in one of the wastewater lagoons, we recommended exactly that. The initial pilot program, we didn't want to reinvent the wheel. So we said just spray it on a weekly basis using this and that ratio. But once we needed to move to the full-scale program, the idea there was to automate the whole process. And as you said earlier, the idea in Ras Al Khaimah was to run both the manufacturing of the humus soil as well as the application of the humus soil on the ground. Run these 2 processes in parallel, because as you said, it's not a waste management, it's waste upcycling, it's the use of that end product into agriculture. This switch in mentality will actually be embedded in each and every one of the operators there and spread, right, to really focus on the circular economy cycle and close that loop.
Yeah, and the third and the last point is that when did the UAE project started last year?
May.
Well, while they were starting, they asked to speak with multiple partner countries, right, who are already doing that process to kind of like learn how to actually get it done, what the pitfalls were and so on. So at that time, we set up a call between Akshay and team from the Ras Al Khaimah municipality team, right, with China, Thailand, Malaysia, Australia, and of course, Indonesia. Now, what do we learn from this? We realized that cross-cultural exchanges are really valuable. It is a unifying force. This becomes an opportunity for young people to connect, to learn best practices, to play a part. Because now the threat of climate change is defined as the common enemy, with generational sustainability as the common goal.
Absolutely.
Okay, so everywhere, people in different places now work together. We are to compete against time.
Thank you, Roel. I think. Sorry, I have to cut you off there because I think I want to invite some audience questions as well. But just to quickly respond on some of the points that you mentioned, I think as Pajemi mentioned, in Djarum, I think we're not the expert in waste management and we're just learning, but really appreciate the kind words. And before I pass it on to the audience, I want to ask Pajemi one question. I know that Djarum Foundation has a number of environmental initiatives. Could you elaborate more on how this organic waste program is related to the other programs that you have?
Thank you, Nadia. I think, Roel, that the upcycle, I think, is the key here, is because we've been known for tree planting. We started our environmental initiative since 1979. And we started from regreening our hometown in Kudus and then scale up to our rain tree planting in northern coastal road, and to reforesting forests, Gunung Muria and Pati Ayam. So obviously, because of that, we need a lot of humus. So for us, when we look at these solutions, it makes sense. There is that upcycle aspect of it that we can see from managing organic waste, and then seeing that there's a solutions to manage organic waste, reducing the waste going to the landfill. But at the same time, we can use the products of managing these organic waste, going back, upcycling, and then use it for our tree planting process. So it's very closely, there's a very clear connections to our tree planting initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Pa. And now I'd like to open it up to audience questions. I think we can also raise your hand if you have a question. Any questions from the floor? No questions? So we're very clear then. Okay, so if no questions, maybe I'll just wrap up and attempt to summarize. But maybe before I do that, do you want to have some closing remarks, Pa? For me?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. If I may attempt to summarize, I think based on some of the context that Pa Nofrizal has shared, waste as a sector is projected to be about almost 3 times the size of the ag sector in terms of greenhouse gas emissions in Indonesia by 2030, assuming business as usual. So policy really needs to be in the driver's seat in redirecting this trajectory. The second point is that there is a need for a top-down and bottom-up approach to addressing this issue of organic waste management. And civil society, as Mas Iqbal has shown in his presentation, has a really big role to play in engaging communities to drive behavior change at the local or household level. Thirdly, as we heard from Roel, I think we need technology to be part of the climate solution. VRM is only one of the many tools that could be used by both the public and private sector in achieving their impact targets around waste management. My fourth point is that the private sector should, I think, play a bigger role in supporting the waste management ecosystem, because a multi-stakeholder approach in tackling the issue is the only way to create lasting change. And lastly, given the urgency of the climate crisis that we are dealing with today, any environmental intervention, including waste management, needs to be addressed with climate in mind, so it can support Indonesia in achieving its NDCs. So thank you very much once again, everybody, to our speakers and our distinguished guests, Ibu Ifin. And have a good evening.